Reading, writing.
Her name is Writing?
And Reefer.
Ah, the 3 R's.
Well, I was walking home and a friend of mine asked me if I wanted to go smoke a joint, so I said,
Must be a
we went over
Blockbuster
to his
video.
house and smoked a joint.
What'd you do after that?
We stared at a
we
bag of
decided to come
Funyuns
over
for
here,
about
but it was
an hour,
raining,
and
so
then
just
we
waited till it
laughed, and we
stopped, then we came
didn't
over
know
here,
why we laughed.
And he smoked a joint with me and my brother.
You still high?
Yeah, a little.
I'm also stupid.
Feel good?
Yeah.
A 12-year-old schoolboy stoned on reefer, marijuana.
The devil's
For
lettuce,
years,
will
we
you?
have debated the legal and medical ramifications of marijuana smoking. But for the most part, we've talked about adults. All our medical research has been done on adults.
Well,
This
someone
report
please
is
think
not
of the
about
children.
adults, and it is not about the occasional use of marijuana. It is about chronic marijuana smoking by American youngsters. Suddenly, in just the past few years, hundreds of thousands of American youngsters have
Electric
become
sex,
daily
huh?
marijuana smokers. Not experimenters, not occasional users, but chronic smokers. In their own
Why do they
words,
keep following that kid?
Why can't they just have good, clean,
they
wholesome
smoke
booze?
not just at weekend rock concerts. They smoke every day.
Well, that guy's gonna
And
be a
not just
pervert later.
teenagers, but children. They
Well,
are
him
smoking
too.
reefer
It's the
with a
shirtless
frequency
festival.
and in ways that are potentially disastrous.
How many joints I was smoking was
Hey.
about 100 a week.
100 joints a week.
It's about 10 a day, a little more. And usually, large group that I know that I'm friendly with smokes in the morning, smokes
By
in the
100,
afternoon,
he
and
means
smokes at night.
3.
And any time in between that, too.
Is that
To
Henry
support a
Winkler?
habit this extensive, where do these kids get the money?
They work for it. Some take it from their bar mitzvah or confirmation
Oh, the
money.
bar mitzvah money.
Some deal for it.
I like when I get up in the morning, I like to smoke one, or after
He
I
has
eat,
round teeth.
I kind of like to smoke one then, or just when there's a bunch of people around, that's when I really like to smoke pot.
At least that's what the script says.
What effect do you think smoking marijuana has on your work at school?
Not too good of effect, because when you smoke marijuana, you just don't feel like doing work right then. You don't feel like even getting into it at all, listening or nothing. It just makes it seem like a drag.
Yeah.
Get
real
it?
drag.
A drag?
Like in a dream. It's not normal, and it's not too active.
She has
You're
no
just
top
in
lip.
between, just right.
That's what marijuana did to her.
Yeah.
Brian lives in Florida, but there are children like Brian in almost
He's
every
half
American
fish.
city. Children who, even before they enter high
It's
school,
okay. He's
have
the
become
42nd
veteran
kid
marijuana
his
users.
parents had, so.
How old were you when you started smoking regular?
About 8.5, 9.
How often do you get stoned?
Almost every day.
How does it make you feel?
12.
I just feel relaxed,
Yeah.
you know. Just like to sit there and watch TV or do something.
Could you tell us about your smoking habits? When do you light up your first joint?
Well, on the weekends when I first get up after a while, I just smoke a couple joints to get off, and then I just wait a while, and then after I've gone down, and I smoke some more.
Like the Bob
And on
Marley song.
weekdays, I usually
Totally
don't smoke
reading a
anymore,
script.
But sometimes I buy a couple joints and go up to the bus stop, and we match each other. But it's usually I just wait till after school and come home and get high with my brother.
Well, it's
and
a good
stuff.
thing that that's not a problem now of children being
Do many
distracted
of your
and
friends
doing
smoke at
nothing.
school?
As
Yeah, almost all of them.
at least they just
About
have their
20%
smartphones.
don't.
Yeah.
What grade are you going to be in this year?
8th.
Like most of the children you will meet in this report, Brian lives in a pleasant neighborhood. He is not a deprived child, he is not a delinquent, he does not like alcohol, tobacco, or PCP. Smoking marijuana, toking they call it, is what he and his friends prefer. And their entire lives have come to revolve around what they call copping a buzz.
How many joints
I could hear
do
the
you
air
smoke a
quotes when he
day?
says that.
Around 5, 6. sometimes more, because sometimes, like, there's a party Friday night or something, we just smoke almost our whole bag, say.
At least that's what the cue
When
card
you say
says.
smoke 5 joints by yourself?
No, with friends, like just friends of mine.
How many joints does it take you to get high?
Mr.
Let's
Owl.
find out.
Probably
What?
just about a half a joint, not even that much.
3.
Just about 3-4 tokes, and I've got copped a buzz.
And how long does the buzz last?
Cop the buzz.
About an hour.
Is that like Count de Monet?
And then you
Yeah.
toke up again?
Yeah, I just take like 3 or 4 more tokes and then just put it out and save it for after a while.
Often, by the time Brian boards the morning school bus, he and some friends have shared their first joint. Sometimes
Well,
they
you
decide
got
not
to.
to
You're
go
going
to
to
school.
school.
Yeah.
In one 9-week period last year, Brian skipped school 16 days without his mother's knowledge. He spent those
Well, it was
days
probably his mother's
stoned on
pot.
marijuana.
What
There
was
a
Ferris
time when
Bueller's
Brian was
excuse?
an excellent student, interested in school. That has changed.
I just feel good getting high in the morning at first, but then after a while, I just get real tired and fall asleep in class and stuff.
I feel it has made him sort of forgetful and just not really caring like he used to. But now that I realize that he smoked some before school, now I can really see why his grades have gone down.
Yeah, right. She
What
was in a...
happens if you're sitting in a classroom high and a teacher is
Oh,
giving
hi.
a lecture?
Oh, hi, Weed.
I just sit there. I listen, but I don't remember it after she said it.
Well,
Say
I
she
didn't
said
smoke pot in
something, and
school,
she'll
and I had
call
the
on
same
me to answer the question,
problem.
I'll say, what? What?
They are using it often, every day, and many times throughout the day. And,
Maybe you should
I,
do something
to be
about
honest,
it,
didn't
Mom.
even realize how often my own son
But
was
at least
using
I'm
it till
making
this
money
interview.
off of them. I mean,
Experts like Dr. Robert DuPont believe that many adults are not aware of the extent of their children's smoking.
He also has DuPont
No,
stain-resistant
they're
coating
not.
on
and I
his
think
coat.
this is a very sad fact.
And glasses.
Over the age of 25, the levels of marijuana use fall very dramatically, and over 30, they fall to practically zero.
He go into the barber shop and say, "Give me the sportscaster."
So the people who are adults don't see very much marijuana use and are utterly unaware of both the extent of it and the rapid increases that are going on in marijuana use.
Edward G.
I see it
Robinson,
going on all over
journalist.
the country right now, involving schools, involving parents, everybody. People don't want to see the problem.
They don't understand it.
Young Barbara
they
Streisand
try
weighs
really
in.
hard to understand it,
The
but
one eyebrow is
they
trying to
don't know what's
escape.
going on, and it's hitting them really hard, you know.
What is going on?
Their kids are out getting high.
Yeah, Jim
Dr. Johnston,
Belushi.
your annual surveys of American high school seniors show a steady rise in the number of students who are daily habitual smokers of marijuana. Is that trend continuing? What do your 1978 figures show?
Yes, it is continuing. We're finding that among the most recent high school class, 1978 seniors, that about 11% are reporting daily or near daily marijuana use. And this figure is up considerably from an earlier class, 1975, where the comparable number was about 6%. So the number of daily users has nearly doubled in 3 years.
What that University of Michigan study means is that nationwide, 11% of all
Ignore me
American
now,
high school
but I'm
seniors
smoking
were
dope.
smoking
One day
marijuana
I'll be
every
big
day.
and strong.
Looks like
Those are
He-Man
just high
smoking.
school seniors. An official government report says that in 1977,
Wow, I wish I could
more than
make a
4
cloud like
million young
that.
Americans ages 12 to 17 were what the report called current users of marijuana.
It's no longer uncommon for 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds,
Did he take a
and
level
even
to his
younger
hairline?
people to be using marijuana on a regular basis.
I think it's important that during this same period where we've been observing a constant increase in marijuana use, the proportion of young people who are involved with other illicit drugs has remained very stable, almost exactly where it has been over the last 4 years.
Lisa is
Of course, we're only talking
15
about the
now,
white neighborhoods.
but she has been smoking marijuana for a long time.
When did you start smoking regularly?
About 8 o'clock.
In 7th grade.
How much did you smoke?
About 4 or 5 joints a day,
How long have you been smoking?
Are these
4 or
like
5 joints a day?
toothpicks or what?
3 years.
What effect did it have on you?
I like the high.
What was it about marijuana that made it so important to your life?
What's my next line?
When you get high, you mellow out a lot. You forget about your problems, school, tensions.
News reporters.
Do many of the kids smoke as much as you do?
Mm-hmm.
Chris attends the same high school as Lisa in a suburb of
I'm
Atlanta,
going to go to
Georgia.
Tashi Station to get some power
He became a marijuana
converters.
user at age 11. Now he's 15 and a heavy marijuana smoker.
Well, when I don't have it, it depends on how many people, you know, front it to me or whatever you want to call it. Like, when I don't have it, I smoke between 10 and 15 a week.
Where the hell did they do this
Friday
report?
nights and
Bumblefuck,
Saturday nights.
Tennessee?
And then when I got it, I smoked
They
twice
just picked
that
all the
much.
people out of the cast of Heavy Metal Parking Lot and sat them
I
down.
got a bag of my own. It's usually gone in 2 hours.
Why do you smoke that much? What do you get out of it? You just like the high?
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice feeling.
It's
You can sit
nice,
back
like
and
a nice
relax and
car.
listen to the music and have
All
your
right,
fun.
all right, all right.
Like you smoke your first joint, and if you've been smoking it a long time, then you get
That's
your
how
buzz,
it goes.
you know,
I
going.
get stoned and
That's when
they
you
stay
just-
the
your head's
same
kinda like,
age.
it's just barely
Yes,
on
they
the tip
do.
Where you want more, you know. And then by the time you smoke the second joint, you'll be high, and then you're just like, you're relaxed, and
You're driving
you
your
don't let nothing
Lincoln.
bother you, and nothing ever bothers you. When you're normal, every little thing, you know, could bother you, but like when you're high, you don't let nothing bother you, let it pass by.
Seriously, how has it affected your grades?
Isn't she like 30?
Well, my grades were all right till I hit the 7th grade, and that's when I started getting high too. The highs are more important than the grades, more or less.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
I don't really know. I had no idea.
Oh, well, it's obviously because you're high.
Yeah.
And not because you're, you know, a teenager.
His father's room and killed his father with the axe. And then, when his mother stirred in her sleep, he killed her with the axe.
These are
did he get
scenes
high?
from the anti-marijuana film Reefer Madness, released in 1936.
I don't remember anything with an
The demons
axe
of
in
marijuana
Reefer
were not
Madness.
satisfied. He went from there into his brother's room and killed his brother.
Marijuana.
In those days, marijuana was called the devil's weed. Films portrayed marijuana as the certain cause of murder, insanity, and sexual depravity.
All sponsored by Philip
With
Morris.
publicity like this, it's not surprising that by 1937, marijuana was illegal in America. But the anti-marijuana propaganda was so distorted and heavy-handed that it produced a backlash. There was so much exaggeration of the evils of the drug that many people stopped believing any bad news about marijuana. That skepticism is still with us. And it's one reason that today's young pot smokers are reluctant to believe that
Those are some
marijuana is
cool-ass
anything but a
glasses,
harmless herb. That attitude is encouraged by advertisements
Hey,
like this
you
one,
smoking a
suggesting
pipe.
that Uncle
There's one
Sam
fine
wants you
advertisement.
to smoke marijuana through a
I'd
water
buy
pipe,
U.S.
or
bonds.
what
Oh,
potheads
bonds.
call a
That's
bomb.
even better.
Peddling the paraphernalia of marijuana smoking has become a $250 million industry. Much of the advertising seems to be aimed at young people, like the Space Pistols, designed not for games, but to squirt
Hold on,
marijuana
I'm
smoke
writing
into the
this down.
lungs.
Yeah,
And
what's
there's
the
a
P.O.
Frisbee
box on
called
that?
Catch a Buzz. It has a built-in pipe for smoking marijuana between tosses. Milk and cookies are used as a background to pitch rolling paper. These
Oh,
days, not
Santa's
many
a
Americans
pot
roll
peddler.
their own tobacco cigarettes, but a lot of people, including children, roll joints. The rolling paper comes in strawberry and banana flavors.
Better ad market
All
than
of these
Sonic.
advertisements appear in High Times magazine, a publication aimed at the American drug culture. Many youngsters told us they got most of their news about marijuana from High Times.
So we figured we'd let everyone
And from
else
such a
know about
source,
it.
They are not likely to get much adverse information about the drug. The implication of some advertisements is that reefer is
that
good for
kid's
everybody,
cool.
regardless of age. Some young people have come to believe that.
Like a friend of mine, they have a kid, and He gets high. Even one night we got him high. He's about 2 or 3.
How do you get a 2 or 3 year old child high?
Well, the script
You just
says.
take him out a token, he tokes it. Then he starts getting red-eyed, then you know he's high.
How did he act?
Then he starts jumping around.
Do you ever think that regular marijuana smoking, the kind of smoking
Looks
you
like
do,
his eyes
and
are
the kind
trying
of
to
smoking your
escape
friends
his
do,
face.
10, 20, 30 joints a week, might turn out to be harmful to your health?
No, I don't have a doubt in my mind, you know, that it'll hurt me. It won't never hurt me, I know.
No, I don't really think it could harm you. And I don't really think it does nothing to your body except, you know, sometimes make you just feel like a statue or something. Not really like that, but where you don't want to move.
Young pot smokers are fond of praising the pleasures of the simple weed. Marijuana is a weed, but it contains over 300 chemicals. 60 of those chemicals are found in no other plant. The most potent of them is called THC. THC is the major intoxicating element in marijuana, which this is, grown in a government laboratory. THC is what makes the pot smoker feel high. Now, the THC content and therefore
Edwin
the
G.
potency
Robinson.
of marijuana can be increased by selective cultivation, and that is happening. On the average, the marijuana available in
Watch
our
him just
streets
bury
and
his face into the
schoolyards
plants and
has
go.
become more than 10 times stronger in just the past 4 years.
His eyes are usually very wide open,
but it
pot.
means that just as our children are taking up chronic
And he's
pot
standing
smoking
like a
at younger
statue, have you
age,
noticed?
the chemical content of the
Maybe
marijuana
not
they're
like a
smoking
statue, but
is growing
it's
stronger
standing there that
and
you
stronger.
don't want to do
When the
that.
pot smoker uses that good material, the smoke
the
carries a
PBS
variety of chemical
guy.
compounds to the lungs.
Dude, the PBS guy is
Within
cool.
seconds,
Yeah.
the THC begins to circulate throughout the body, carried by the fatty particles in the bloodstream. Almost instantly, there is an effect on the brain.
I want to
As
see it
with alcohol,
smile. That would
the
make
human
my
thought
day.
process is chemically altered. This state of intoxication is what getting stoned is all about. Along with the intoxication, the heartbeat increases dramatically. This is why many scientists believe that no one with a heart condition should use marijuana. Unlike alcohol, the THC from marijuana remains in the body for a long time. Up to 3 days after you've smoked a joint, half the THC is still in your body, where it tends to accumulate in the reproductive system, the brain, and other vital organs.
Sounds great.
Just how long the last traces of THC remain in the body, no one knows. The more you smoke, the greater the accumulation. That may be one reason that heavy smokers seem to develop a tolerance. They have to smoke more marijuana or stronger marijuana in order
Are they
to feel
flashing
high.
subliminal messages?
But what concerns scientists are the potential long-term effects of THC accumulating in the vital organs.
Yes, this is nothing like alcohol.
No one knows what those effects will be, but many scientists are particularly concerned about the chronic
Short
use
round?
of marijuana during the formative years of
No time for
childhood and
bud,
adolescence.
Dr. Jones.
Dr. Sidney Cohen of UCLA is among them.
Very funny.
Cohen, are you more
He's wearing a
concerned
mask.
about marijuana use by young people than you are about marijuana use by adults?
Yes, I am, and especially for the following reason.
I think
Not
that's a
only do they
Jack Palance
have
mask with a
longer
white wig.
periods of time to be exposed to marijuana and therefore possibly harmed by it, but youth is a time of learning how to deal with life, how to cope, how to deal with stress, how to manage anxiety.
That's why I like to beat
If
up
you don't
prostitutes.
learn it then, when do you learn it?
Are you saying then that marijuana would stand in the way of young people going from adolescence to adulthood?
To psychological adulthood, yes. And this can be dangerous. And this is why I'm particularly concerned about very young people, and we're hearing now of 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds becoming over-involved in this drug.
Young people
That would
themselves
be terrible
are
if that
discovering
was
at
true.
least one effect of chronic smoking. They call
Had
it
it been true.
being burned out. The first symptoms are a drastic change in the way marijuana makes you feel.
When I first started getting high, I'd be laughing and everything. But lately, you know, I just get kind of mellowed out and I don't say much. I become real quiet and everything. And I don't know if the high, I guess I'm kind of sick of the high.
Megan Fox is sick of the high.
Smoker, you know, is real active, tries to make everyone laugh at him, and is always
Don't you have a cornfield to go hide in?
Doing something. But the people who've already smoked or burn out, they just like to sit around, watch TV, or they don't like to do much.
That must be a stoner who's sitting like a statue.
What stage are you in?
My dad always
Just
calls me a
sitting around
Mr.
stage.
Bungle,
I don't
whatever
do
that
much. I
means.
just sit around, fix something to eat. It just makes me drowsy and just like to sit there and not move. Say I'm thirsty, I can't. I'm just
Like
so
a statue.
plumped out. I don't even want to go get something to drink.
You are high, but you don't consider it as high. You know, it's just another thing. And you'd have to smoke more of it once you've smoked it a while than you would if you've just started smoking it.
In case you didn't hear the last
Instead of
5
one
people
joint,
say
take
that,
2 or
here
3
it is again.
joints. So,
Is that why you smoke more now?
yeah.
The young man we're talking to spends a lot of time just sitting and listening to music. Keith is 16. He's been a daily marijuana user for more than a year. Now his friends call him burned out.
Being burned out, that's just, you don't get high when you smoke it, or you just acting kind of really dumb, you know. Somebody, they'll talk to you and you don't hear them or you don't pay attention to them. That's when people start calling you burnt out.
Really?
You have trouble with your memory?
Huh?
Yeah, you forget what you're saying.
And then
Who
people
told
start
you were
calling you a
burned out,
burnout.
and why did they tell you that?
Just my friends clowning around, you know, they're saying, oh, you're burnt out, you know.
What were you doing that made them say that?
I was being a
They'd be
burnout.
talking to me.
Well, I would get,
I'm just not
I'd
paying
smoke
attention.
and I'd not get high, and
realizing
then
that they
they'd
were
call me a burnout, and then I'd
I've
forget
seen
what they're
this too,
saying,
and,
and
it's
then they
entirely
call me a
possible
burnout.
that youngsters who
His
smoke
eyes look empty and
lots
dead
of
inside.
good pot over long periods of time sustain some mental impairment which is not completely reversible. It may go on for months, and there is a suspicion that some of it may be permanent, so that they're not as keen, as sharp as they were previously. This may not be perceived by the youngster.
They say, hey, burnout, you know, we're talking to you. But I don't consider myself ever being burnt out. I don't know, you know. They may say that I am, but I don't.
And I say, why don't you call me by my real name, Joe Dirt?
Have you ever seen
Yeah.
other people who you think are burnout who don't think they're burnout themselves?
Yeah, I do. When I smoke by myself, I just think about things.
And you know,
can
thinking
just
is bad.
Think about things that you don't think about when you're not smoking it. Just not anything in particular, just anything really. You can just.
See,
you're not
that's
bored 'cause
horrible.
you kinda like got
I mean,
something
get a
to do.
2-year-old high,
Yeah,
that's
you're
one thing,
thinking.
but thinking we can't.
Or you're
No,
just
No,
doing
that's
something.
unacceptable.
But you're sitting
just
still.
work, join the army,
And you don't-
and work.
you don't think to yourself
Have
that
children, send them to
you're
school, and then
sitting
to
still, not
work,
doing
and
anything.
then to war.
You're sitting still.
If you're going to think about
things.
something, think about
And you
NBC
don't
News.
Think to yourself that you're bored. At least I don't anyway.
Have you ever done anything when you were really stoned that you were really proud of? You know, put a bike together or anything like that? Or is it mostly just sitting when you are stoned?
Well, my friends call me a burnout.
Well, I may have done it, but I don't really remember it. You know, just nothing that's really important. When I'm stoned, I just like sitting back and just listen to music mostly. That's what I like doing when I'm high.
But if you stay stoned most of the time, that means that's what you do most of the time.
Yeah.
I don't know what parents can do, because after I did
Inconceivable.
everything, I know, I've asked, I've read, I've studied, I've prayed.
I'm still looking for an answer. I'm not going to give up hope.
Well, keep
because I am
praying, and
that
maybe
fearful
he'll
of
come
it.
around.
I'm afraid that the effects will be very major. And it's going to be found out at a point of no return as far as the youngsters that are engaged now in it.
Basically, a young person who is chronically stoned is not coping with the important tasks of growing up. He is going to be diverted from the normal growth and is going to find himself further and further behind his peers.
Kids don't think about their future because they don't...
This young man is a member of an organization called Pot Smokers Anonymous. He quit marijuana when he began to see the effects of chronic smoking on his own life.
I was getting a little lazy, and I figured that sooner or later I was going to get burnt. I was going to have the burnout feeling, as you said.
Over here.
And then
I talked to my friend Ron Howard, and he got me a job.
And I didn't want to be it that way. I want to make something of myself.
Well, some of them will stop, I would hope, and recoup. Others who continue to use this good material and continue over many years may be so impaired that they will never function at their best level of effectiveness.
Keith Strupp is the
Michael J.
Washington
Fox?
lobbyist for NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. He'll soon be leaving NORML, but in the past 8 years he's done a great deal to make America more tolerant of marijuana
Except for
use
matching
by
his
adults.
clothes.
Keith Strupp believes that the use of marijuana should be restricted to adults. He's worried about the increase in chronic marijuana smoking among young people.
There is a tendency on the part of young people today to underestimate the potential for
Lou
harm from
Reed.
psychoactive drug use, I think.
I thought it was Mick Jagger.
I would caution them against this. There is no such thing as a totally safe drug, and I don't think marijuana is going to be the first. It should obviously not be a daily habit, and in particular, it should not be something people do before they attend school or before they study for exams or things
Just
like
like
that.
when I was with my mate
In the White
Keith,
House and
I
other
said,
key government
"Look,
positions,
Keith,
Dr. Robert
we're
DuPont
supposed to
also
go to
helped
school, you
liberalize
bloody
American
bloke."
attitudes toward marijuana. Now in private practice, he has
Nixon
had
smoking a
second
reefer?
thoughts. In the past, you've said publicly that marijuana is less of a hazard to health than tobacco or alcohol. Why have you changed your mind?
For two reasons. One is we know a lot more about the health hazards of marijuana now.
Did his glasses get bigger since earlier?
But two,
I think
equally
he
important
stole
is
them
that I
from
now
Harry
realize
Carey.
that this has been interpreted by the public as meaning marijuana is okay.
Harry
We're
Carey's
so used
walking
to
around
alcohol and
bumping into
tobacco that
walls
we assume that
outside.
marijuana
Well,
is
he
no
normally
worse.
does
Then why not
anyways.
get used
True.
to marijuana? That is a disaster, and I feel very badly to have contributed to that.
Just as for 20 or 30 or 40 years,
And then
people
when I told
oversimplified
Keith, look,
and
we
exaggerated
gotta
the
go out
dangers that might
to
be
the
present with
academy
smoking
around
marijuana,
all the
I think there is a
people.
tendency today,
And
especially
then
among
said,
young people,
look,
to assume
look what
the
I could
other
do. I
direction
can make
that,
smoke
because
rings.
marijuana isn't a killer drug, that therefore it's totally harmless. Or in some cases, they actually believe it's a panacea.
Marijuana is no panacea, but like any other drug, it does have potential medical applications.
Get your hand
For
off your
example, it's
pecker.
believed to be useful in treating certain kinds of glaucoma. Here at the National Institutes of Health, it's being tested as a means of relieving the
Looks like the
agonizing
National
side
Institute of
effects
Mole
of
haircuts.
chemotherapy in some cancer victims. And there are other current experiments. But all of them are just that, experiments to determine
Meanwhile,
whether
Emo Phillips is
marijuana,
trying to
or in
ignore
some
him back
cases
there.
THC alone, can help the victims of serious disease. The problem is that by the time news of these experiments reaches the schoolyard, the information has
People's
become
Sexiest
garbled.
Man Alive,
Some of the children we
1975.
spoke to were convinced that
The 70s were a
marijuana
rough,
had been
rough
proven to be
decade.
a safe medicine for asthma, cataracts, even cancer.
Oh,
And that
cataracts.
marijuana was not merely harmless, but beneficial, like vitamin pills.
And a lot of people think if they smoked, then their lungs would be all right, and they don't think it's something bad for you.
I heard that it helped your lungs, as a matter of fact. That's why I thought it's kind of good to smoke it.
Well, I know where this myth starts. It starts at UCLA, where we studied this problem and did find that THC, even marijuana,
Kinda looks like the first
will
doctor.
dilate the bronchial tubes. Now, unfortunately,
The first ever doctor to
marijuana is not
exist.
good medicine for asthma because it has so many irritants in it.
With cancer, there's another confusion. Marijuana is used for people who have cancer and are getting cancer chemotherapy and have nausea and vomiting because of the cancer chemotherapeutic drugs. And marijuana does reduce the nausea and vomiting. It has nothing to do with cancer whatsoever. The very same people who think marijuana is harmless think it is a therapeutic agent. Well, the only reason it could possibly be a therapeutic agent is because it's a very powerful chemical. If it weren't doing anything in the body, it wouldn't be potentially useful for a therapy.
He's fun at parties.
Most of our knowledge about the chemicals in marijuana comes from these plants. This field is part of a government research project at the University of Mississippi. The director, Dr. Carlton
Substitute
Turner,
teacher goes for a walk.
supervises the cultivation of the marijuana for scientific research. He also analyzes the chemical content of marijuana seized on the streets. He's worried about the presence of carcinogens, that is, known cancer-causing
So he's
agents
gonna
in
smoke it
marijuana
all.
smoke. Because pot users smoke less than tobacco users, they have generally assumed that there is no risk of lung cancer from marijuana smoking.
And there
But
isn't.
with
And
the
so far,
quantities
they've been
of
proven
potent
right.
marijuana that today's young chronic smokers are consuming, Dr. Turner thinks there is a risk.
I would say that there's more tar in a cannabis cigarette than there will be in a tobacco cigarette. And the tar here is of a different chemical composition. Some of the chemicals that you find in tobacco smoke, you also find here. In fact, you have more carcinogenic compounds in the smoke from a cannabis cigarette than you do from a single tobacco cigarette of the same size.
Most young people already know that the tar in tobacco smoke contains carcinogens, which can cause cancer. But many do not know that research has shown even more carcinogens in the tar from marijuana smoke.
No, it hasn't.
The plain fact is that the chemicals are there that do cause cancer, and
No,
we
they
know
don't.
that, and we ought to get that message out, that that is a serious problem and a major threat.
No, it isn't.
Remember
Very
that
hard to not talk
marijuana is
bullshit
kept in
through
the
this
lungs
whole...
for a long time, much longer than tobacco smoke. It gets way down into the small
Ringo.
bronchi, and it's entirely possible that since it does contain coal tars, that it's a possible cause.
Remember that time
of
that Paul
cancer.
snitched on us for smoking weed?
Considerations of cancer aside, is it possible to compare the
dick.
effect of a marijuana cigarette on the lungs with the effect of a cigarette made of tobacco?
Yes. In our study at UCLA, Dr. Tashkin found that
Be sure to name
5
drop
marijuana
UCLA so you get
joints
paid.
had the same effect as smoking 112 tobacco cigarettes.
Dr.
No, it isn't.
Tashkin's study was the first direct comparison of the effects of marijuana smoke and tobacco smoke on the human lungs. It showed that one marijuana joint produced the same amount of lung inflammation as more than a pack of cigarettes. That lung
No, it doesn't.
inflammation shrinks the air
Bullshit.
passages, making it more difficult to breathe. So the effect on a child's lungs from 5 joints a week is the same as smoking more than 5 packs of cigarettes a week. Let's talk about you, Mr. Strupp. You gave up cigarettes
Bob Geldof?
years ago.
Almost 10 years ago, right.
You've smoked marijuana daily for about 10 years.
Correct.
You have bronchitis.
Or at least I seem to cough in the mornings, right.
You cough in the morning sufficiently to make you think you'd better go have a
I'm going
checkup.
to start coughing
That's correct.
bullshit right now.
Well, you know, I'm no different, I suppose, than alcohol drinkers or cigarette smokers at times. I've never known a cigarette smoker yet who didn't occasionally say he was going to quit and occasionally curse the day that they started as they were coughing in the morning, etc. I feel a little of that. I mean, I think marijuana smoking on a daily basis is almost bound to cause some complications in your lungs because you are bringing in smoke into your lungs, and I doubt that that's healthy. I've noticed myself in the last year in particular, I seem to cough in the mornings very much like a cigarette smoker.
Just get a joint like this. Another person comes up to you.
And they blow on that and blow all the smoke right into your lungs?
And you can take it through the nose, too.
Really? What does that
Why
do
would you
for
do that?
You cop a super rush, because it's a lot bigger than a toke.
You just made that up, didn't you?
And are all the kids doing this?
Are
Some of
they?
the
Am I
younger
supposed
ones,
to say
don't
yes?
know how yet, or are scared to. Fact of the seeds popping in your mouth, the fire falling down. Some joints tend
Please
to
stop
run,
looking at
you
the
know,
cue cards.
and the fire can go in your mouth, and it hurts.
taking a substance, a smoke.
His glasses are growing.
And unlike a cigarette smoke, the person
Or his eyes are
purposely inhales
shrinking,
very
I don't
deeply
know.
and then holds it to get the maximum exposure to the deepest part of the lungs. Well, this is a disaster in terms of...
He looks like a Cub
health
fan and a Bud man.
I don't think it's possible to bring a foreign substance into your lungs as you do with marijuana and expect that if you use enough of it over a long period of time that you're not going to have some ill effects. I think you will.
But there is a more
What,
immediate
Gandalf
effect
is
of
smoking
marijuana
now?
use, intoxication. Now, this device attaches to an automobile dashboard so a driver can toke marijuana while he travels the highway. I'm using pipe tobacco, by the way.
Yeah,
the
right.
popularity of a gadget like this is another example
with
of how
eyes like
misinformed
that.
some of our young people are on the intoxicating effects of marijuana. They have been educated about the dangers of mixing alcohol in driving, but many still cling to the notion that marijuana is different and safe. But tests at the Southern California Research Institute have shown that marijuana severely impairs a driver's perception, concentration, reaction time, and overall
Of course
driving
that's going to
skills.
impair you. Look at that
The
damn
tests
football
show
helmet.
that the decrease in driving ability is directly related to the amount of marijuana smoked. They also show that this impairment of
Science
driving ability
instrument.
persists for several hours, even after the marijuana smoker no longer feels high. But again, the facts about what this can mean on the highway have not reached many of our young people.
Well, I think anything that you can do when you're straight, you can do when you're high.
Including driving a car?
Including driving a car.
On marijuana, you hardly ever hear any car accidents on marijuana because you always know what you're doing.
For whatever reason, alcohol
Unless you're an
drinkers for
idiot,
a long
of
time
course.
used to claim that they could get drunk and drive all right. It seemed to them they drove all right, even though they ran into the rest of us, and a lot of other people knew all along they couldn't drive well. Well, marijuana smokers, I'm afraid, have fallen for that same line of self-congratulatory. They've generally told each other, hey, man, I can smoke the best marijuana in the world and drive, and it's not like alcohol, it's okay. Well, that's simply not true.
It is a major source of
Well, he shouldn't be driving at all. I mean, he's probably legally blind. Now look at them fucking
because
guys.
of drivers stoned on marijuana.
Let me make it clear that the research is now convincing that you should not smoke marijuana and drive an automobile, period. Whether you're an adult or a juvenile doesn't make any difference.
Why isn't this information available to young marijuana smokers?
Just because of our worrying about having every I dotted and every T crossed. We're not saying it clearly, but the evidence is there.
You'll go into health class and there's about maybe a 3-page thing on drug abuse and drugs, and it just says marijuana, mild hallucinogen, and that's just about it.
Would it be fair to say, Dr. Cohen, that the young people in the United States who are now using marijuana regularly
Where's my
are in effect
TARDIS?
the guinea pigs in an experiment on a national scale?
What did I tell
they're certainly
Hyman
doing
about
things to
this?
themselves that we, as researchers, wouldn't do or wouldn't be allowed to do. So, yes, they are guinea pigs. We are learning some of the unhappy sides of marijuana from them.
They're making themselves guinea pigs. There's no doubt about it. They are skating on the thinnest of thin ice, and
He huffs
it's
paint.
a hope that they have that they're not running a very
Sniff
severe
super
health
glue,
hazard,
too, but that's okay.
health risk. I think they're going to lose their bets.
Besides
Yeah.
the potential health consequences
Now he's
for the chronic
creeping around
smoker,
school
there's
windows.
another aspect of
Wait,
the
now it's
growing
Eric
use of
Idle telling
marijuana
you
by
about the
young.
Ruddles.
Those 4 million juveniles who use marijuana, even if they merely experiment with it or use it occasionally, have one thing in common. They are breaking the law. In a legal sense, at least, they have become a generation of outlaws. They're on the receiving end of a vast criminal network of marijuana growers, smugglers, and distributors.
And politicians.
In many cases, our children are part of that criminal
Flipping
network.
you off.
Hey, back at you.
It begins here, in the marijuana fields of Colombia, the major source of supply for America's multi-billion-dollar marijuana industry. Officially, marijuana cultivation is illegal in Colombia. But in fact, there is 10 times more marijuana grown in Colombia today than there was just 5 years ago.
You know, the
Nearly
worst
all
thing
of
in
it is
Colombia
destined
is
for
the
the
record
United
club.
States.
Yeah.
Most of it leaves Colombia from
Thankfully,
the
our
northern
military
Guajira
wiped
Peninsula.
that out.
From there, a steady stream of freighters, fishing boats, even yachts carries it to delivery points.
Sounds like
all along
Colombia
the
needs
United
some
States
freedom.
coastline. In addition, aircraft leave the Guajira regularly, smuggling tons of marijuana as far north as Chicago.
Obviously, when you're talking about ships
Not
bringing in
good,
20
clean,
or 30
safe
tons of marijuana
Chicago.
at a time, you're not talking about a group of college kids that are off on a lark at spring vacation. You're talking about a syndicate, organized crime. It may not be the mafioso, but it's certainly organized crime dealing in millions of dollars. Sometimes violence. It's a
Willie
culture
had
that
a hell
none
of
us
a
are very
life
proud of.
before meeting Alf.
Yeah.
A charter member of that culture is pilot Robert Eby, now in prison.
Pervert, Robert Indy.
Last
Indy,
year, Robert
throw me
Eby
the
was
whip.
arrested when his DC-4, loaded with Colombian marijuana, became stuck in the mud at an airport in Virginia. Before that, he'd made 30 smuggling flights, penetrating the American air defense system each time.
Coming back to the United States, you listen on the radio for flight plans to be filed. And coming out of the Bahamas and out of a lot of Latin
He used
American
to
countries,
smuggle
there's
the
no
pot in his mutton chop.
telephones or facility to file a flight plan other than by when you get in the air, then you file it over the radio. You listen for somebody to file a flight plan, and being you're in a faster aircraft, say a DC-4 over 172, you try to catch up to where he's at. And before he penetrates, you're on his tail
A lot of
about
penetrating going on here.
30 feet behind him.
That's why he's
So
sitting
you
with his legs
piggyback
crossed.
on another plane. Piggyback on another airplane. And there's somebody that doesn't even aware that you're even there. If you'd ever look behind him and see he's about to be eaten up by a big airplane, he'd probably have a heart attack.
Today, the bulk of the incoming marijuana is hauled by freighters like this one.
The
They
Exxon
make
Valdez.
offshore deliveries to Americans who smuggle it to distributors' warehouses. There is so much coming in that marijuana literally washes ashore on some Florida
Where
beaches.
are these beaches?
The
No
fact
shit.
is that despite the best efforts of the American government,
Maybe Florida
this
ain't
country
so
is being
bad.
flooded with marijuana.
We need to get a beach house.
Throughout the country, marijuana is pervasive. It's all over, at every social level throughout the country. We have made some significant cases. We're continuing to investigate other cases. However, the flow is just so enormous that we are inundated.
I don't really have to go out and find
And then
it.
my
It's just somebody
friends,
comes
they
up and
call
say,
me
"Hey,
a
you wanna smoke?"
burnout, you know?
Yeah.
It finds you
I'm a-
more or less.
And
I forgot.
I forget, you
If you
know.
got the money, you can get the quality to match it. Because I know you can get.
When's he just
green
going to
pot
jump the shark already?
is supposedly the worst. Now, don't get me wrong. There's very good green pot also.
Gatorade.
And then there's gold, which is usually always good. Now, the gold will cost you more than the bad stuff. But if you have the money, you can get just about anything.
We can't essentially deal with the problems of the black market, problems like age controls.
Willie
and
looked pretty
quality
cool with a
controls and
mullet,
strength
though.
controls. You can't begin to address those problems until you first eliminate the black market.
He
and offer a
spearheaded the
regulated
mullet
legal
movement.
market.
I wouldn't recommend that now. It's true we have some, what we call them, recreational drugs now that are legal and that we wish would go away. But that doesn't mean that we ought to add marijuana to that list.
Do you think marijuana should be legalized?
Yeah, if I was president, I'd have done had it legalized a long time ago.
Yeah, there was a
nothing
time when I
wrong
would find
with
him
it.
being president laughable,
What would be the
but
big advantages
but,
of
you know,
legalization?
Well,
2016,
Then
so.
people in the store, you'd probably be able to just walk in the store and get a pack of joints, you know, like cigarettes. And then they'd have different brands, I guess, you know, Colombian, Mexican, whatever you want.
Our experience with alcohol and tobacco is so bad that to think about that as a precedent for dealing with marijuana is just, to me, an unthinkable idea.
well,
That debate
I
over
have a
legalization
different
has been
plan for
going on
that,
for a
me and
long
Nancy.
time. While it has,
Ooh.
many American
Ugh.
schoolyards have become retail outlets for the marijuana industry. In a recent
That would
Gallup
be a good
poll,
place to have a retail
81%
outlet.
of American high school students said that marijuana was easy or fairly easy to obtain. Nearly 60% of junior high school students said the same thing. And some children are not just buying reefer,
All
they're
right,
selling
the
it.
cameraman spray
Often
painted
they
that
are
on the
chronic
wall.
smokers who deal in order to finance their own marijuana habits.
They usually are selling joints at the bus stop or bags, whatever, during lunch, after school.
Well, once you get a bag, you just roll
All right,
up
the
joints
next
and
shot
sell
of
'em.
him,
You
his
get your
eyes are
money
going to be
back,
touching
and then
his
you
ears.
keep what's left over.
Usually when you start, you buy a quarter pound, which is 4 ounces. And that goes for anywhere between 100 and 150. But usually it's about 125. So then you take 3 of those ounces, and you sell them for about 45 a piece, and then you make about $10 and an ounce for your head.
That's for your own use?
Yeah, for my own use. It's just my terms.
Are a lot of kids dealing?
Not a lot, but I'd say enough. Enough to supply the whole entire school.
If they arrested
And
everybody,
burnout, you know, that's all they ever come. I mean,
they'd be arresting just about
because they forget stuff, you
everybody
know.
that's, you know, about 13 on up.
To cut
George
down
Harrison.
on arrests, some states, like Alaska,
Ah, the Dalai
have
Lama?
passed decriminalization laws. Basically, this makes the possession of small amounts of marijuana a minor offense, with no jail term or criminal record involved. So far, 11 states have passed such laws. Some people think that's a step in the right direction. Others think that this relaxing of the rules for adult smokers has further confused young people on the subject of marijuana. But you were in the government, Dr. DuPont. You
All
were
right,
one
the
of the
glasses
first
definitely are
policymakers
getting
to
bigger.
advocate that criminal penalties be removed for the possession of a certain amount, a small amount of marijuana. Do you think there's a connection between the growing acceptance of that, of decriminalization, and the increase in the number of young marijuana users?
I do, and I think it's tragic. It relates to the fact that for most people,
I
they
bet
can
you he
only
burns
think about an
ants in
issue
the
in black
sunlight
and
with
white
those
terms.
big old honking
They
glasses.
see support for a fine as opposed to a prison sentence for marijuana possession as being pro-pot. The public, the policymakers, everybody is still way too confused about marijuana. We're not giving clear messages to young people, to anybody about marijuana yet, and then we've got to change that.
What is the clear message you would give?
That marijuana is a
That I
dangerous
want more
drug.
money
I
from
think
the
our
other
obligation is
industries.
to convince people that even if marijuana is dangerous to use, it's not a criminal justice problem. And those who use it should be provided with good information. We should try to convince them that it's not in their best interest to endanger their own health, but we should not confuse them with criminals.
The drug problem is filled with many unpleasant realities. There's none more unpleasant, more painful, or more surprising
Turn
than
over.
the large number of young people who are using marijuana every day and whose lives are affected, distorted, and harmed
Is he
in many,
blinking
many
Morse
ways.
code? Help me.
What would it take to convince you to stop?
Well, if I heard something was bad, like it could kill you or make you real sick or something like that, I wouldn't take it. I wouldn't smoke
Or
it.
your balls will explode.
What should our society do about a
Nice work on
12-year-old
the
who
spray
smokes
painting there,
marijuana
Ed.
daily? Before we can do anything, we must recognize that Brian and hundreds of thousands like him are
His
a
hands
new
are
and
yellow.
special problem. Up to now, our national debate has concerned itself mainly with the occasional use of marijuana by adults. That debate is not likely to end soon. But our children cannot wait. We have to tell them something now.
Now I'm going to go flash the
Admittedly,
kids.
there are still some important things that we don't know about the long-term effects of chronic
He likes to
marijuana
report
use on the
without
human
pants
body,
on.
especially on children. But in the meantime,
effects of
our
chronic
children are not being given the
marijuana.
knowledge that is available now. They've not been told that the marijuana they are smoking is 10 times as potent as the stuff that college students were using 5 years ago.
Unlike me, who was
They've not been told
impotent.
about the cancer-causing elements in marijuana smoke. Many of them don't even realize that marijuana makes it dangerous to drive a car. It is not the children's fault that they don't know these things. It is the fault of our government, of our schools, of
And
all
our
of
near
us.
century of lies about it.
Show, you know, a cargo light gives off a romantic glow. Never have to wait in line. Popcorn stand, 'cause there's something women like about a pickup, man. You can set my truck on fire and roll it down a hill, and I still wouldn't trade it for a coupe de ville. And an 8-foot bed that never has to be made. You know, if it weren't for trucks, we wouldn't have tailgates. I met all my wives in traffic jams. There's just something women like about a pickup, man. A bucket of rust or a brand new machine. Once around the block and you'll know what I mean. You can set my truck on fire and roll it down a hill, and I still wouldn't trade it for a coupe de ville. I got an 8-foot bed that never has to be made. You know, if it weren't for trucks, we wouldn't have tailgates. And all my wives and traffic jams is just something women like about a pickup man. Something.